Hi everyone, my name is Kai Sol, and I love turning boring things into something magical. With a bit of clay, a sprinkle of golden dust, and the amazing help from my companions, I'm bringing you a special video today, one that takes you back to the Third Age of Middle-earth, a time when the Age of Men was beginning to rise. And somewhere along that stream of time lies the Hobbit. In the deep darkness beneath the lonely mountain, Erebor, once the glorious kingdom of the dwarves, now only the cold echo of metal and stone remains. Bilbo Baggins, a small hobbit, stands before a vast sea of gold, where Smaug, the infamous dragon, lies curled up in slumber atop the stolen treasure. Every step seemed to tread upon centuries of greed and sin. But then, just a tiny clink, and the sound of shifting gold echoes like thunder. Smaug's blazing red eyes snap open. A dragon massive, terrifying, and proud rises from the sea of gold like a living myth reborn. Bilbo holds his breath and runs. The entire mountain trembles. But the most terrifying thing isn't Smaug's fire, it's the look in his eyes, sharp, intelligent, and merciless, as if he already knows who's hiding from him. I start with a simple wire skeleton to define the pose and size of Smaug. Then I bulk it out with aluminum foil and tape. For the wings, I use aluminum tape, the kind that sticks to everything except what you actually want. I trim the edges to create flowing wing membranes, like sheets of dragon skin ready to stretch into the air. Once the base structure is solid, I begin applying clay to the body. I use a stainless steel chopstick, yes, a regular dining chopstick, to smooth and shape the basic forms. Each stroke feels like I'm recalling the shape of a creature long asleep beneath the golden dust of Erebor. I move on to the wings. Smaug's wings aren't just large, they have a unique, grotesque kind of beauty. I spread thin layers of clay over the frame and smooth them out with the chopstick. There's something truly special about touching the head of a dragon. I begin with 2 small pieces of clay pressed into the eye sockets to shape the cheekbones. Then the mouth and the teeth, each fang teased out as if Smaug is hissing his very first greeting. I gently press in the nose ridge, then carve out the small spikes along his cheeks and jaw. Finally, I add 2 large horns, and in that moment, it feels like Smaug is staring right back at me from beneath the clay. The dragon's neck holds so much movement, it's both flexible and tense with power. I begin carving thin wrinkles like tiny waves. The spikes along the neck, sharp and wild, are sculpted from clay too. I attach them one by one, imagining I'm rebuilding a living trap. From the spine down to the tail, I carve each layer of scales using the pointed tip of a sculpting tool. Each scale feels like a piece of armor worn, uneven and threatening. I add tiny grooves and dotted textures, details that make the surface feel disturbingly real. For the shoulder and wing areas, I use a special tool, one I designed and 3D printed myself. It creates a unique skin texture for the dragon, something that's hard to achieve evenly by hand. I apply a few large scales over the shoulder bones. These scales make Smaug look older, like a cursed dragon king. Now the wings have claws curved long and sharp like the scythes of darkness. Once they're attached, I look up at the whole upper body. It feels like I've just completed the top half of a mythical statue. Now it's time to move on to the lower half. There was this unexpectedly artistic moment. The dragon's shadow reflected on the screen of my phone. I kept attaching sharp spikes along the spine all the way down to the tail. They look like bones exposed from a nightmare. Then came the thighs and legs. I used the same special tool to carve deep, rough textures into the skin. This is the part where the dragon carries his entire weight it needs to feel solid, strong, and primal. Each claw was sculpted and carved in place. Not just sharp, they had to feel heavy. I added wrinkles at the joints where tendons and muscles grip the bones, details that make it look truly alive even when completely still. I took a step back and looked at the entire creature I had just brought to life from clay. Fixed a few shallow lines, smoothed out a small dent. A moment of silence, then a smile. The dragon was finished. Now it's time to breathe life into it, with color. There are tools that don't just support your creativity, they inspire you to create better, more precisely, and to lose yourself even deeper in the world of model making. This is the GHAC Swallowtail SD, an airbrush from Galeri's A-series, lightweight, well-balanced and smooth with every trigger pull. With a short stroke trigger for a quick response and a precision nozzle, the Swallowtail SD is especially great for fine line work, shadowing, and smooth gradient blending. If you're someone who loves having complete control over every tiny detail, this might just be a tool worth trying. And this is the GTS-06 Serenair, a super quiet, compact mini compressor that runs smoothly, whether you're laying down base coats or drawing fine lines. Together they make the perfect combo, compact, refined, and full of inspiration. Let's unbox and experience them with me. After sculpting comes the moment Smaug is truly brought to life with color. I start with an all-black base coat covering the entire body. This layer helps the following colors adhere better and adds depth like a shadowy foundation. I spray the belly and chest with a warm yellow-brown, like sun-baked sandstone, heated beneath deep volcanic mountains. Fiery orange-red for the back and wings. Next comes a layer of fiery orange-red over the back and wings. I mix a bit of black into the orange-red to add shadows along the spine, wing bones, and the parts that fall into darkness. A thin wash of transparent reddish-brown applied only to a few key areas. Now it's time to switch to hand painting. I begin with the aged scales on the shoulders, dotting them one by one. And now the eyes. I choose yellow, not a bright gold, but the yellow of treasure, reflecting dim light and greedy eyes. At the center, a jet black iris, sharp, cold like it's staring straight through you. Finally, I use a dry brush and a touch of white paint to lightly sweep highlight strokes across the entire body. It's like dusting Smaug with a thin layer of time-worn ash, making him look both ancient and deadly. And this is my favorite part. Every detail, every color layer feels like a part of his personality, alluring, yet dangerous. If you think this already looks cool, just wait until Smaug is placed in his rightful setting, a ruined Erebor, glittering with treasure and something still alive. Next, I begin crafting one of the most iconic details from Erebor, a lone stone pillar rising from a sea of gold, the very spot where Bilbo once hid, holding his breath face to face with death. I use 4megs to build the structure, nothing fancy, but solid as if carved by dwarves 1,000 years ago. Here's a quick look at the rough stone details to help you visualize it better. They may look simple now, but just wait, they're about to come alive. I glue the pieces together, one layer at a time. Tiny cracks, chipped corners, every imperfection feels like a mark of age. When it's done, the pillar looks ancient, as if it has witnessed far too much, yet silently remembers it all. Now, onto the treasure. I use XPS foam to build up the mounds of gold, layer upon layer, as if coins had been pouring out for centuries. Once the shapes are ready, I coat the entire surface with a layer of plaster, just enough to add texture, so later lights can catch even the tiniest bump and ripple. Once the plaster dries, I gently trim off the excess with a craft knife. And just like that, the terrain for Erebor's treasure hoard is complete. The Lonely Mountain begins to stir from legend. While waiting for the plaster to fully dry, I use the time to sculpt a few small accent pieces. Starting with Bilbo, the quiet heart of this entire story. I sculpt him from clay, tiny, barely the size of a pencil tip. He stands on a little block of wood like a paperweight, small, awkward, and somehow brave. Next are the treasures scattered throughout the hoard, tiny chests, old swords, a few broken pieces of armor. I still use clay to make them, not because it's fast, but because each item carries its own soul. They're fragments of a glorious past, relics of battles long gone, and riches left forgotten. I take a moment to look back at the accessories I've just made. They're small, but they carry the weight of an entire story. I scatter them across the treasure pile randomly, with no particular pattern, as if the hoard had been disturbed by the sweep of dragon wings. I roll clay into thin strands, bake them, then cut them into coins about 1 millimeter thick. No fancy techniques here, just patience and rhythm. But I believe once these coins are scattered onto the model, Erebor will breathe again. Now it's time to paint the entire treasure hoard. I start, as always, with a layer of black primer covering every surface. But this time feels different because the next layer will shimmer like real gold. It might just be the most radiant coat of paint I've ever done. I spray a coat of gold over the surface. This base layer helps the glitter stick evenly and creates a deeper light effect once everything's finished. While waiting for the gold to dry, I paint the stone pillar. A cool gray blue, as if the mountain stone still holds the breath of Smaug after all these centuries. This is PVA glue, a simple material but kind of magical. Once dry, it turns clear and sticks incredibly well. I brush on a thin layer over the surface, then sprinkle on large flakes of glitter. Each flake falls like golden dust, quiet yet radiant. To keep the coins from shifting when touched, I use a simple trick hairspray over the whole surface. These are the tiny coins I prepped earlier. I scatter them across the surface, random yet somehow orderly. The empty spaces fill up with gold, layer by layer, as if rebuilding a legend. Next, I airbrush a soft coat of gold shimmer across the coins, and just like that, Erebor's treasure looks like it stepped out of the screen, glimmering, resplendent, and honestly, I'm really happy with how this turned out. I use a fine brush to paint the treasure chests and scattered swords, a touch of bronze, and finally, a light sprinkle of glitter across the surface. Not enough to cover the coins, just enough to catch the light and sparkle. I place Bilbo back in his spot right beneath the stone pillar. A tiny figure standing amidst a sea of gold, the light reflecting off the coins into his eyes as if telling the whole story all over again. At last, I place Smaug into the scene, a proud dragon resting atop the treasure like the whole world was his to claim. Everything is now in its place. Every treasure, every pillar, every coin of gold. And at the very center, Smaug sprawled across the hoard as if he was born to lie there. This isn't just a grand scene, it's a memory rebuilt by hand, a place once quiet yet full of tension. From the way light dances across the coins to the shadows cast along the dragon's back, every detail helps retell the story of a legendary creature, magnificent, terrifying, and heartbreakingly tragic. But what I love most is that calm before the storm when Smaug doesn't yet know he's about to walk into a trap. Still, this journey isn't over. In the next part, we'll witness the legendary moment when Smaug is lured into the Forget and molten gold begins to pour down. A fiery end for one who lived his whole life in greed. Don't take your eyes off the screen, because what's coming next will be even more spectacular. Hello, I'm back again. I hope you're still with me on this journey. Next up, I've created a molten river of gold, and Smaug, furious, bursts out from the golden flood. Sounds intense, but the process, surprisingly simple. Let me show you how. Now, I'm moving on to a watercolor sketch. This is one of my favorite parts of the process. It helps me visualize the character more clearly, and honestly, it's just really relaxing to do. Sometimes I print them out to hang on my wall, or if you happen to love it too, I might just send one your way. Next, I started sculpting the clay statue. Every little detail was hand-sculpted. After completing the clay base, I carefully covered the entire surface with thin layers of gold leaf. This process took time, but the result was worth it, a lifelike and proud gold statue. If you look closely, you will see that the gold is not completely smooth, and that is what I love most. It makes the statue come alive. The background this time is quite simple. I just placed a few greenstone pillars, and that's enough to recreate the atmosphere inside the forge. But the most special part is the flowing golden river. At first glance, it might seem complicated, but the process is surprisingly simple. If you're curious, stick around. I'll show you step by step how to create this molten gold effect that looks way more dramatic than it actually is. I'm going to start sculpting Smaug directly with clay, skipping the metal frame since I already showed that earlier in the video. And because it's still Smaug, the sculpting steps are pretty much the same. So this time, let me share a little side story with you. I truly love creating and making these videos. It's how I share all the technical knowledge and creative experience I have with you. At this point, this channel is the only bridge that connects me to you through every model, every painting, every little story I tell. But honestly, things have been tough. For over a year now, The DIY diorama niche has been declining, and with limited income, continuing this journey has become more and more difficult. I've even asked myself, should I keep going? But then I realized even if there is just one person watching, I still want to give it my all. That's why I'm reaching out for your support. If you choose to support me, I promise to keep improving, keep learning, and keep creating works that you'll be proud to watch. I'm planning to launch a Patreon soon, a space where I can share more with you behind the scenes of each build, original watercolor sketches, 3D files, or even handmade Godzilla or how to train your dragon figures. You can also send me your questions and I'll make custom tutorial videos just for you. If you have a 3D file that needs fixing, I can help you with that too. I want it to be a small but warm and creative community. I'll be launching the Patreon soon and I'll leave the link in the video description. Thank you for listening and for staying with me until now. Your support means the world to me and it's what keeps this journey alive. Back to the model, I'm now approaching the final moments of this video. Just one last touch, a layer of molten gold over Smaug. As the brush swept across the surface, I couldn't help but recall one chilling line from the film, "I am fire, I am death." That line wasn't just a roar of rage, it was a declaration of war, a terrifying signal of a tragedy to come in. The Hobbit, the Battle of the Five Armies. If you enjoy the stories I tell and the dioramas I built, spark your curiosity, don't forget to like and share this video so more people can discover the channel. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. See you in the next video.